My 12-year-old daughter was sitting in her wheelchair on our backyard patio. She was just reading a book and enjoying the sun. It was a calm day. Then Karen from the HOA came through the gate without knocking. She was angry and yelling about furniture, not allowed outside and breaking rules. She pointed at the old wooden chair next to my daughter. Before anyone could stop her, Karen picked up the chair high over her head. She smashed it down hard on my daughter's back and shoulders. The chair broke into pieces. My daughter cried out in pain and fell forward in her wheelchair. Blood came from a cut on her head. She looked at me with scared, teary eyes and said, "Daddy, it hurts bad." Karen stood there with a proud smile, like she fixed a big problem. She had no idea the man running toward her full of anger was the police chief of the whole town. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from, and please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My 12-year-old daughter was sitting quietly in her wheelchair on our backyard patio. She was positioned right where the sunlight came through the trees in the afternoon, the warm glow landing gently on her shoulders and the open book resting in her lap. One hand held the page. The other traced the edge of the paper slowly, absent-mindedly, the way she did when she was relaxed. She hadn't been relaxed in a long time. Doctor visits, physical therapy, pain that came and went without warning, all of it had worn her down. That wheelchair wasn't something she liked. It was something she endured. But on that day, on that patio, she looked almost peaceful. The backyard was quiet. The grass had just been cut. The air smelled clean. A breeze moved the leaves overhead, creating soft shadows that danced across the concrete patio. Somewhere beyond the fence, a lawnmower hummed. Birds chirped. Everything felt normal, safe. I was inside the house, just a few steps away, cleaning up after lunch. The back door was open so I could hear her if she needed anything. Every few minutes, I glanced outside just to check on her. She smiled when she noticed me looking. "Dad," she said softly, holding up her book, "this part is really good." I smiled back. "I'll come sit with you in a minute," I said. There was an old wooden chair beside her wheelchair. Nothing fancy, just something we'd kept around for years. I usually sat there while she read. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just enjoyed being quiet together. Nothing about it felt wrong. Nothing about it broke any rules. Then the gate opened, not slowly, not politely. It slammed. The sound was sharp and sudden, metal hitting metal, loud enough that my daughter flinched and looked up from her book. Before she could even turn her wheelchair, footsteps came fast across the yard. I felt something tighten in my chest. Karen from the HOA came through the gate without knocking. She didn't ask if anyone was home. She didn't call out. She didn't hesitate. She marched straight onto the patio like she owned it. Her face was already red with anger. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes scanned the yard aggressively, like she was hunting for something to punish. She started yelling before she even stopped walking. "This is not allowed," she shouted. "You can't have furniture outside like this. These are HOA violations." My daughter froze. She looked down at herself, then at the chair, then back at Karen, confusion written all over her face. I'm just reading," she said softly. "I didn't know." Karen cut her off immediately. "Don't talk back to me," she snapped. "I know the rules." She pointed directly at the old wooden chair beside the wheelchair. "That chair does not belong out here." My daughter swallowed. "That's just so my dad can sit with me," she said quietly. "I can't stand up yet," Karen scoffed. "That's not my problem." I took a step toward the door. Karen stepped closer to my daughter. Too close. Before my mind could fully process what was happening, Karen grabbed the chair with both hands. She lifted it up, muscles straining, her face twisted with rage. Time slowed. My daughter's eyes widened. "Please," she whispered. Karen raised the chair high over her head, and then she brought it down. Hard. The chair smashed into my daughter's back and shoulders with a sickening crack. Wood exploded into splinters. The force jolted the wheelchair forward violently. My daughter screamed. A sound of pure pain and terror ripped from her throat as she collapsed forward in the chair, her book flying out of her lap and landing face down on the concrete. Broken wood scattered everywhere. Blood appeared almost immediately, dark against her hair, dripping down onto her cheek from a cut on her head. She cried uncontrollably, gasping, trying to push herself upright but failing. I was already running. I burst through the back door, heart pounding, vision blurring as I crossed the yard in seconds. My knees hit the concrete beside her as I caught her before she could fall out of the chair. "Hey, hey, I've got you," I said, my voice shaking despite every attempt to stay calm. She was shaking violently. Her small body trembled as she clutched my arm with both hands, fingers digging into my sleeve like she was afraid to let go. "Daddy," she cried, her voice broken and weak. "It hurts bad." Blood ran down her temple. Her shoulders were already bruising. She winced when I touched her back, sobbing harder. I looked up. Karen was standing there. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't panicking. She was smiling, a proud smile. Like she had fixed something. Like she had solved a problem. "Now that's handled," she said calmly. I felt something inside me snap into place. Not panic, not fear, control. I stood up slowly, keeping one hand on my daughter's shoulder. Karen finally noticed my expression. Her smile faltered. I took a step toward her. She took a step back. She had no idea. No idea that the man standing in front of her, fists clenched, eyes burning, heart breaking, was the police chief of the entire town, and her life had just changed forever. The sound stayed with me. Even after everything else faded, even after the screaming stopped and the yard filled with people, that sound kept repeating in my head. Wood breaking, not the clean snap of something old giving way. This was violent, sharp, explosive, a sound that didn't belong in a quiet backyard on a sunny afternoon. I felt it before I fully understood it. The vibration ran through the concrete as I dropped to my knees beside my daughter, my hands shaking as I tried to steady her in the wheelchair. She was bent forward at an unnatural angle, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Blood ran from her hairline down the side of her face, soaking into her shirt. "Easy, easy. I've got you," I whispered, though my own voice was breaking. She clung to me like she was drowning. Her fingers dug into my arm, nails biting through fabric, her whole body trembling in shock. Every time she tried to inhale, a sharp sob caught in her chest. "It hurts," she cried. "Daddy, it hurts so bad." I pressed my forehead gently against hers, careful not to touch the wound. "I know," I said. "I know. Stay with me." Behind us, Karen moved. I heard her footsteps shift against the patio stones. "Well," she said flatly, "that's what happens when people don't follow the rules." I slowly turned my head. Karen was standing a few feet away, holding a broken chair leg like it was nothing more than trash. Splintered wood lay scattered around her shoes. The rest of the chair was destroyed, pieces everywhere, proof of how much force she had used. She didn't look scared. She didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied, like she had just completed a task. I stood up, not fast, not aggressively. Slowly, I placed my body between her and my daughter, blocking Karen's view completely. My hands clenched at my sides, every muscle tight, but my voice came, "Oh, calm. You step away from my child," I said. Karen laughed, actually laughed. "She shouldn't have been out here," she snapped. I warned her. My vision tunneled. I pulled my phone from my pocket without taking my eyes off her. Karen noticed. "What are you doing?" she demanded. I dialed. "My name is Chief Daniels," I said into the phone, my voice clear and controlled. "I need immediate units to my address. We have an assault on a minor. Suspect still on scene." The word chief hung in the air. Karen froze. "What?" she said, her confidence cracking for the first time. I lowered the phone slightly and looked directly at her. "You entered my property without permission," I continued into the call. "You used a weapon. My child is injured and bleeding." Karen shook her head violently. No, no, no," she said. "You can't do this. This is an HOA matter." I ended the call. "This is a felony," I said. Her face changed. The color drained from it. She took a step backward, then another, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. Neighbors had started to gather at the fence after hearing the scream. Someone yelled from 2 houses down. "What happened?" Karen raised her voice, trying to regain control. "She attacked me," she shouted. She refused to comply. I turned slightly so she could see my daughter again. She was still crying, her face streaked with blood, her body shaking uncontrollably. No one believed Karen. The sound of sirens grew faint in the distance. Karen heard them. Her breathing quickened. "This is unnecessary," she said quickly. "We can talk about this." She tried to move toward the gate. I stepped in her path. You're not leaving, I said. She stopped. The sirens grew louder. My daughter whimpered behind me. I knelt again, checking her head, her neck, her shoulders. She cried out when I touched her back, and I immediately pulled my hands away. I'm sorry, I said. Softly. I'm sorry. Her eyes met mine, wide and glassy with fear. Am I going to die? She whispered. That question shattered something inside me. No, I said firmly. You're not, I promise. The first patrol car skidded to a stop outside the gate, then another, then an ambulance. Officers rushed into the yard, their eyes immediately locking onto my daughter. One of them dropped to his knees beside her without hesitation. Oh my God, he muttered. Another officer turned to Karen. Ma'am, he said sharply, drop whatever you're holding and step back. Karen raised her hands, still clutching the chair leg. She assaulted me, Karen insisted. I was enforcing rules. The officer didn't respond. He took the chair leg from her hand and tossed it aside. Turn around, he said. Karen's voice went shrill. You can't arrest me. I represent the HOA. The cuffs snapped shut. Karen screamed. My daughter buried her face against my chest, shaking harder. I wrapped my arms around her as paramedics worked quickly, checking her head, stabilizing her neck, speaking to her gently. You're doing great, one of them said. You're very brave. Karen was led toward the gate, still shouting, still blaming. As she passed us, she looked at my daughter one last time. There was fear in her eyes now. Not regret. Fear. The sound of breaking wood had started it all. But the sound of handcuffs closing, that was the sound Karen would never forget. Karen stopped screaming the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. Not because she accepted what was happening, but because something inside her finally understood that this time was different. Her shoulders stiffened as the cold metal locked around her wrists. For years, she had shouted her way out of every situation, threatened fines, quoted rules, used titles like weapons. People usually backed down, they always had, but now the officers weren't stepping away. They were stepping closer. This is a mistake, Karen said quickly, her voice suddenly tight instead of loud. You don't understand the situation. One officer didn't even look at her. He was looking at my daughter, at the blood still drying in her hair, at the way she shook uncontrollably despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, at the wheelchair tilted forward from the impact. Another officer spoke quietly into his radio, confirmed assault. Child victim, weapon used, requesting supervisor. Karen's eyes darted toward him. Weapon? She snapped. It was a chair. The officer finally turned to her. You lifted it over your head, he said evenly, and brought it down on a child's back. Karen opened her mouth, closed it. Behind the fence, more neighbors had gathered. Some stood frozen, hands over their mouths. Others whispered. Phones were raised, videos recorded. The truth was spreading in real time. Karen noticed. Her breathing grew faster. You people don't know what she's like, Karen said, raising her voice again, trying to regain control. She disrespected me. She refused to comply. A neighbor spoke up. She was reading a book. Another voice followed. She didn't even move. Karen spun toward them. Mind your business, she shouted. That was the moment she lost it. The officer tightened his grip on her arm. That's enough, he said sharply. Karen jerked against him. Get your hands off me, she screamed. I have rights. The struggle was brief. She wasn't strong. She had never needed to be. They guided her firmly toward the side of the yard, away from my daughter. As they walked, Karen's composure completely collapsed. This is harassment, she yelled. I will sue all of you. I know people. Her voice cracked on the last word. I knelt beside my daughter as paramedics finished stabilizing her. One carefully cleaned the blood from her hair while another checked her shoulders and spine. She cried softly with each touch. I know, the medic whispered. I'm sorry. You're doing great. My daughter squeezed my hand. Dad, why did she do that? She asked quietly. I swallowed. I don't know, I said. But she won't ever do it again. Karen heard me. She twisted her head around, eyes wild. Don't lie to her, she shouted. You're raising her wrong. That was it. An officer stepped directly in front of her. You are done talking, he said. Anything you say now will be used against you. Karen laughed, a short, hysterical sound. Good, she said. I want it recorded. She straightened her back as much as the cuffs allowed and raised her chin toward the cameras and phones. I was enforcing HOA regulations, she announced loudly. That child was violating them. A murmur ran through the crowd. One officer muttered, Jesus. Another shook his head. Karen kept going. I had no choice, she insisted. Rules exist for a reason. The supervisor arrived then. He took one look at the scene and his expression hardened. Who's the victim? He asked. Several people pointed at my daughter. The supervisor walked over, crouched beside her, and spoke gently. Can you tell me what happened? My daughter hesitated, then nodded. She came in, she said softly, her voice shaking. She yelled. Then she hit me with the chair. Karen's face twisted. She's lying, she screamed. The supervisor stood slowly. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, he said, calm but firm, you are being arrested for felony assault on a minor. The word felony hit her like a slap. No, Karen whispered. No, no, no. Her legs gave out. They caught her before she fell. This isn't happening, she said over and over. This isn't happening. But it was. As they led her toward the patrol car, Karen's eyes scanned the faces around her. The neighbors she had bullied, the Fami. Lies she had threatened. The children she had scared. No one looked away. No one defended her. The car door opened. Karen stopped just before getting in. She turned and looked back at my daughter. For the first time, there was no anger on her face, only fear. The door closed. The sound echoed. And just like that, Karen lost control of everything she thought she owned. Truth doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't kick down doors or shout over people. It arrives quietly, piece by piece, until there is nowhere left to hide. Karen learned that lesson in the days that followed. The backyard was empty by the time the ambulance pulled away. The broken chair had been collected into an evidence bag. Bloodstains were marked and photographed. The once calm patio looked like a crime scene because it was. My daughter lay on a hospital bed under harsh white lights, her small body wrapped in blankets, machines humming softly beside her. A doctor gently cleaned the wound on her head, while another checked her shoulders and spine again. She's lucky, one of them said quietly. Very lucky. That word hit me harder than anything else. Lucky, because she had been sitting in a wheelchair when a grown woman brought a chair down on her back, because it hadn't been worse, because she was still breathing. I sat beside her, holding her hand, watching her eyelids flutter as exhaustion finally overtook the fear. Every time she shifted, she winced. Every time someone moved too fast, her body tensed. Trauma doesn't need permission to settle in. Outside the room, the investigation moved fast. Faster than Karen ever expected. Detectives interviewed every witness. Neighbors who had stayed silent for years suddenly found their voices. Statements poured in, not just about that day, but about years of intimidation, threats, and unchecked behavior. She always yelled. She made my kids cry. She thrate. Ned fines she couldn't even issue. A pattern formed, and patterns matter. Security footage was pulled from nearby houses. One camera showed Karen entering the yard without permission. Another captured her lifting the chair. The angle wasn't perfect, but the intent was unmistakable. Her attorney tried to argue context. There was none. By the second day, the story spread beyond the neighborhood. HOA official arrested after assault on disabled child. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Karen's face appeared on screens everywhere, not yelling, not pointing, but pale, eyes downcast, hands cuffed. The image stripped her of the authority she once relied on. Inside an interview room at the station, Karen sat across from two detectives and her lawyer. She looked smaller than she ever had before. No clipboard. No raised voice. Just a woman realizing she was no longer in control. This is being blown out of proportion, she said weakly. One detective slid photos across the table. Blood, splintered wood, a frightened child in a wheelchair. Explain, he said calmly. Karen stared at the table. I was enforcing rules, she whispered. Her lawyer closed his eyes. At the hospital, a social worker sat with my daughter, speaking gently, asking questions no child should ever have to answer. Did she warn you before she hit you? Did she touch you before that? My daughter answered quietly, bravely, her voice shaking but clear. "She just picked it up," she said. "I didn't know what was happening." Those words were recorded. They would be played in court. The arraignment happened 3 days later. Karen stood before the judge, her shoulders hunched, her confidence gone. The courtroom was full. Neighbors sat together. Reporters lined the back wall. I sat in the front row, my daughter's mother beside me, an empty seat where our daughter should have been. The prosecutor spoke carefully, deliberately. "This was not enforcement," he said. "This was an unprovoked violent assault on a disabled minor." Karen's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Medical reports were entered into evidence. Witness statements followed. Video footage played silently on a screen. Karen's actions replayed frame by frame. She didn't look away. She couldn't. When asked how she pleaded, Karen's voice barely carried across the room. Not guilty. The words sounded hollow. Outside the courtroom, the HOA board released a statement. Karen was removed from all duties effective immediately. Policies were rewritten. Committees formed. Apologies issued. Too late. Back at the hospital, my daughter finally asked the question I had been dreading. "Is she going to jail?" I paused. "Yes," I said honestly, "she is." My daughter nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "I just don't want her to hurt anyone else." That was when I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about stopping the harm. Karen's second court appearance came quickly. More charges were added, aggravating factors, use of a weapon, trespassing. Each one closed another door. Karen's lawyer stopped making eye contact. When the judge set a trial date, Karen's hands shook. "This isn't fair," she whispered. The judge looked at her steadily. "Fairness ended the moment you raised that chair," he said. That night, as my daughter slept under dim hospital lights, I stood by the window and watched the city outside. Somewhere, Karen sat alone in a holding cell, stripped of everything she used to intimidate people. No titles, no authority, no one backing away. The truth had come out, and it wasn't finished yet. The courthouse felt heavier than any place I had ever stood. Not loud, not chaotic. Heavy. The kind of weight that settles into your chest and makes every breath feel deliberate. The hallway outside the courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. Shoes echoed softly against the polished floor as people moved past us, but every sound felt distant, like it was happening underwater. I sat on the wooden bench with my daughter's mother beside me. Our daughter wasn't there. The doctors had advised against it. Too much stress, too many unfamiliar faces, too many memories tied to raised voices and sudden movement. Instead, she was at home, resting, watched over by a nurse and a family friend. She had asked me one thing before I left. "Will it be over today?" "Yes," I told her. "Today it ends." She nodded, holding on to that promise like a lifeline. Inside the courtroom, Karen sat at the defense table. She didn't look like the woman who had stormed into our backyard. Her hair was pulled back tightly, as if trying to keep herself together by force. Her hands rested on the table, fingers intertwined, trembling slightly. No clipboard, no badge, no posture of authority, just a defendant. When she looked up and saw the room filled, neighbors, reporters, officers, families, something in her expression shifted. This wasn't a private argument anymore. This was public judgment. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Karen rose slowly, as if gravity itself resisted her. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked down at the file in front of him. It was thick. Too thick for one mistake. Too thick for one bad day. "This court is now in session," he said. The prosecutor stood first. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He let the facts speak. He described the afternoon in simple, devastating detail. A child in a wheelchair, a private backyard, an uninvited entry, a wooden chair lifted overhead and brought down with force. He described the injuries, the blood, the bruising, the trauma. Then he spoke about the aftermath, the hospital visits, the NI, Otmares, the fear of open spaces, the way a 12-year-old flinched when someone raised their hands too quickly. "This was not enforcement," he said firmly. "This was violence." Karen stared straight ahead. Her lawyer stood next. He spoke about stress, about misunderstandings, about momentary loss of control. He avoided the word child as much as possible. When he finished, the judge turned toward the witness list. "Is the victim's family prepared to speak?" he asked. I stood. Every step toward the podium felt longer than the last. I could feel eyes on me, sympathetic, curious, judgmental. But none of it mattered. I thought of my daughter's voice. "Daddy, it hurts bad." I placed my hands on the podium and took a breath. "My daughter trusted adults," I began. "She trusted that being quiet, being polite, following rules would keep her safe." Karen shifted in her seat. "That day," I continued, "she learned that some people don't see children as people. They see them as obstacles." I described the scream, the blood, the fear in her eyes. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. When my daughter asks me now if she's allowed to sit outside, I said quietly, "That's not an accident. That's trauma." The courtroom was silent. The judge nodded slowly. Karen was offered a chance to speak. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered urgently. Karen stood anyway. She looked smaller standing there, like she had shrunk under the weight of her own actions. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she said. "I was just trying to keep order." The judge looked directly at her. "Order," he repeated, "is not maintained with violence." Karen's shoulders slumped. The judge began reading the sentence. Each word landed like a final door closing. Felony assault on a minor. Aggravated circumstances due to disability. Trespassing. Use of an improvised weapon. 18 months in carce. Ration. Mandatory counseling. Permanent ban from HOA authority or leadership. A lifetime restraining order. Karen's face crumpled as the words stacked up. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. She just folded inward. As deputies approached, Karen looked out into the gallery. Her eyes passed over the reporters, the neighbors, and then they stopped, on me. For a moment I saw something there. Not anger, not defiance, understanding. She finally knew what she had done. The cuffs closed around her wrists. The sound echoed through the room. As Karen was led away, no one spoke. No one followed. No one defended her. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. I didn't stop. I drove home. When I walked through the door, my daughter looked up from the couch. "Is it over?" she asked. I knelt in front of her and took her hands gently. "Yes," I said. "She can't hurt you anymore." My daughter exhaled slowly, like she had been holding her breath for weeks. "Okay," she said. And for the first time since that day in the backyard, she smiled. Healing did not arrive all at once. It didn't come with a celebration or a sudden sense of relief. It came quietly, in small moments, the kind you almost miss if you aren't paying attention. The house felt different after sentencing day. Not empty, not broken, different. The shouting was gone. The fear was still there, but softer, like an echo instead of a scream. My daughter spent the first few nights sleeping in the living room. Not because she had to, but because it felt safer. The couch was closer to us. The lights were easier to leave on. The windows didn't face the backyard. I didn't argue. I sat in a chair nearby, pretending to read, listening to her breathe. Sometimes she slept peacefully, sometimes she didn't. There were nights when she woke up crying, her hands clutching the blanket, her body stiff like she was bracing for impact that never came. I would be there before she fully woke, kneeling beside her, speaking softly. "It's okay," I'd say. "You're safe. She's gone." At first she asked me to repeat it, again and again and again. "She can't come back? No. She doesn't know where I am? No. She can't hurt me? No, never again." Eventually she stopped asking. She started believing. The cut on her head healed slowly. The stitches dissolved. The bruises on her shoulders faded from dark purple to yellow to nothing at all. Physical therapy focused on her back for a while. Careful movements, gentle stretches, patience. The therapists were kind. They spoke to her like she mattered. That helped more than they knew. The wheelchair remained for now, but it wasn't permanent. The doctors were confident. Her strength was returning. Her posture improved. She laughed a little more each week. But trauma doesn't follow a medical schedule. Loud noises startled her. If someone raised their hands too fast, she flinched. If a gate slammed somewhere nearby, her breath caught in her throat. Once, when a neighbor accidentally knocked over a patio chair in their own yard, she froze completely, eyes wide, body locked in place. I noticed. I didn't rush her. I sat beside her and waited until her breathing slowed. "It's okay," I said quietly. "That wasn't for you." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks without a sound. "I know," she whispered. "My body just forgot for a second." That sentence broke my heart and healed it a little too. The HOA changed, not just on paper, but in presence. Karen's name disappeared from every document. New rules were written with limits, authority was shared, complaints had oversight, people were encouraged to speak up instead of staying silent. Some neighbors apologized to us directly. We should have stopped her sooner. I never blamed them. Fear makes people small. Courage takes time. The backyard remained empty for a while. The broken chair was gone, replaced with nothing at all. The patio looked normal again, too normal. Like nothing bad had ever happened there. One afternoon, weeks later, my daughter asked something that made my chest tighten. "Can we go outside?" I looked at her carefully. "Only if you want to," I said. She nodded. "I think I do." We took it slow. The back door opened. Sunlight spilled in. The yard was quiet, peaceful. Birds chirped like they always had. I wheeled her just past the doorway and stopped. She didn't move. She didn't panic. She just looked around. The patio, the fence, the gate. Her hands tightened on the armrests. "I'm okay," she said, more to herself than to me. We moved a little farther. I positioned her chair where she used to sit, facing the sun. I stayed close, one hand resting lightly on the back of the chair. Not holding, not restraining, just present. She closed her eyes and tilted her face toward the warmth. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she opened her eyes and looked up at me. She thought I was weak, she said quietly. I shook my head immediately. "No," I said. She was wrong. My daughter considered that. "I didn't fight back," she said. "You didn't have to," I replied. "Surviving is not weakness." She nodded slowly. "I survived." She repeated. Yes, she did. Weeks later, the wheelchair was used less. Then only when she was tired. Then not at all. The first time she stood in the backyard without it, she cried. Not from pain, but from pride. I didn't say anything. I let her have that moment. One evening, as the sun set and the yard filled with orange light, she sat on the patio again. This time on a low cushion, legs stretched carefully in front of her. No chair beside her, no fear behind her, just quiet. She looked at the sky and smiled. "I like it out here again," she said. I felt something loosen in my chest. That night, she slept in her room for the first time since the attack. Door open, light off, no nightmares. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. Karen would serve her sentence. She would sit in a cell without power, without authority, without people shrinking away from her voice. I don't know if she learned compassion, but she learned limits. And sometimes that's enough. My daughter still carries scars. Some visible, some not. But she also carries strength now. Real strength. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that endures. And every time she sits in the sun, whether on the porch or the patio, I remember something important. Power can be taken. Fear can be unlearned. And healing, when given time, wins.